as long as you are consistently working, it's okay to schedule free time for yourself. Welcome back to the channel, guys.
We're live, you know.
It's your boy X. Got the homie James in the corner over there, you know. Nicole's in the building. And, my good buddy over here, Matt.
Doing it.
So, today we're going to be talking about how to maintain a healthy work-life balance. So, who wants to take the reins on that one?
As a tattooer specifically, right?
Yeah, from a tattoo artist perspective.
You don't. You can't.
And a
You're
video.
a slave.
Literally.
That was easy.
You're a slave to your passion.
Literally.
Yeah,
Or you're not gonna make it.
Well, in my opinion, I think I'm probably the most qualified to discuss the work-life balance.
Probably
I feel
got
like
the healthiest.
out of all of you, I
Yeah,
probably
you're the
do it the
healthiest.
best.
Yeah, how does he do that?
I think I do it the
trip
best.
out on
This
him.
guy lives his best life and goes on
Always on
ENTPs.
vacation.
Yeah.
Always
Suffering
on
the
vacay.
least.
But I'm also always working too, though, at the same
Yeah.
time.
Yeah.
But I feel like it happens in stages. When you're in your early career as a tattoo artist, having a work-life balance is near impossible. And then once you develop that routine of grind, and you start seeing more success,
And sex.
and sex.
Yeah.
Yo, X,
Right,
how long have you been
intertwined.
tattooing? Because I feel like that's really important for the context here.
I've been tattooing over 13 years now. So, but yeah, my early career, that was my life. It was Monday through, I think, every day of the week. I don't think I had a day off back then for many, many years, probably until about like year 4.
Not a true day off, no.
Not a real day
Even if
off.
you're not tattooing, you're still
Right.
working. You're still drawing and grinding.
Year 4, year 5, that's when things are like, all right, maybe I can slow down a little bit. But we'll get to that. When you're in your early career, I feel like you develop this routine of working so much that as you climb the pillars of success, it's easy to just stay there because you've made that your daily habit, your daily routine. This is what I do, and this is all I know. So, am I wrong about that, or am I right?
Yeah.
I feel like personally, like the further you go down that ladder, the more work or stress gets applied
That
to you.
It can.
And
this is what I'm saying. That's why
I try
that's
not
why
to
I call
plateau.
it. That's why I call it a
personally.
trap, though, because you can fall into that trap of thinking I have to keep going as ham as I was always going, instead of what I later adopted, which was as long as you are consistently working, it's okay to schedule free time for yourself.
For self-care.
For self-care,
mental
for
health.
relaxation, mental health, decompression. I think that's equally, I really feel it's equally as important as putting in those hours of grind. Because if you grind, you're gonna wear yourself down to at some point where you're either gonna experience some kind of mental, psychological, or physical burnout.
Yep.
Or let's see, what else would you experience?
Or you're just going to suffer with your relationships
Right.
and family and all that
Exactly.
sort of stuff, and you're not going to have time to spread around the
Exactly.
things that human beings normally spread their time around to be healthy and well-balanced, well-rounded.
Exactly. And I feel like it's just important. For me, the catalyst for changing my thought process was probably when I was like 24, and at that point I was working about 6 days a week, 5-6 days a week. But even on my off days, I was still designing tattoos. I was doing a lot more like neo-traditional back then, so I had to schedule my drawing times out. But my schedule usually consisted of this. I'd go to work at 11 o'clock, and I'd be there from anywhere between 8 to midnight. And then after that, I'd rally. I'd get a Red Bull, go to the bar. That was my decompression, was going to the bar, hanging out and shit. And then I'd go home, smoke some weed, and then design tattoos till like 3-4 in the morning, and then go to bed, get up the next day, do it all over again. So, but I had a heart issue that kicked off to where I developed an irregular heartbeat, supraventricular tachycardia, so my heart just beats fast for no reason. I ended up in the hospital for like 2 days. They were talking about doing heart surgery and all this other shit. And like during those 2 days, I just kind of like had an epiphany where I was like, damn, like, you've been on the grind since you're 17 years old, 24, You know, you haven't done anything with your life other than tattoo. You haven't gone anywhere. You haven't experienced anything. You haven't seen anything. You haven't done anything you really want to do for yourself. You've done everything that you've been wanting to accomplish work-wise, but what have you done, you know, that personally fulfills you, you know, hobbies, things of that nature? And I realized the list was very small. So at that point, I was like, you know, I'm going to work my hardest still, but I'm also going to value my relationships, and I'm going to value my free time, my personal time, so that I can enjoy things outside of tattooing. I feel like I've talked to a lot of successful tattooers, and you ask them like, oh, what do you like to do? This and that. They don't have anything much to say. You know, they're just on the grind 24/7 most of the time.
I feel like I had a really similar experience with like my health and being like, there is a limit to this. And honestly, I think you have too with your wrists.
Mm-hmm.
But mine was my mental health, where I was like, there is a limit that I can physically push myself, that I realized as an apprentice. I was like, I do have a cap of stress that
Before it starts affecting you mentally.
Because, yeah, before it starts to really, really tip me over the edge and send me. Like, there's definitely a balance that you have to maintain. But yeah, I feel like you've kind of seen that too, like physically.
Yeah. I mean, like X said, it used to just be all grind for pretty much your drawing, your tattooing, you're working on your business cards, your marketing, your portfolio, online presence, all this different stuff. I mean, for me personally, you know, I own a tattoo shop, so I was running the shop, tattooing full time, slamming out 8-hour sessions, 10-hour sessions sometimes. When I go to conventions and shit, I would do like 13-hour sessions. I mean, Matt saw me do one of those in Boston that was pretty gnarly. And, you know, I was trying to go to the gym, trying to work out, do my thing. And I had a YouTube channel too, editing videos. I like to video game as well, so I was doing that. And everything that I did was stuff that involved me hyper focusing on shit, and then like also using my hands a lot and my wrists a lot. So, you know, going to the boxing gym 4 times a week, and you know, tattooing full time, and then right after smacking on the heavy bag a whole bunch, doing a bunch of pull-ups and dips, all that stuff started to weigh on me. And I think it started happening to me around, I've been tattooing like 12 years now, 11, 12 years. And it started happening to me around like 8 years in, which coincidentally was also in my early 30s. And I ended up getting a chronic tendon injury, like from overuse, where it's basically called like tendinopathy or tendinosis, where it's a degenerative tendon disease, not disease, but like a disorder that affects my ECU tendons, which are on the outside of my wrists, that kind of like flex your wrists like outward like that, which coincides with tattooing because you're like stretching the skin and, you know, doing this back and forth motion all the time. So that was hurting really bad, and it got to the point to where I had to cut back the amount of time that I tattoo and like actively focus on resting my wrists and like, you know, taking care of myself in different ways, doing rice bucket exercises and shit. You know, I've done a lot of stuff to try to fix my wrist, PRP injections, the whole gamut, talking to different physical therapists and hand surgeons and all that. And really the only answer was to stop going as hard as I used to go. And that's a difficult thing for a tattooer to face, especially when there's somebody like me that really doesn't know anything else. And it's something that took a really long time for me to be able to like get through my thick skull. Like, okay, taking care of yourself and kind of easing up on the gas a little bit
like
allows you to travel further. You know what I'm saying?
Necessity.
Like, yeah.
I personally, I feel like I'm different. I think I could be, I would say, blessed in that aspect where I haven't physically had any issues.
What about your back though?
My back, yeah.
Was that messing with you from before?
For a few years, and
before you started tattooing, I mean,
that came from like the fighting and all that stuff first. And now, I mean, I've been doing this a while. My back's okay now. I do things to maintain it and everything. But, you know, 15, 16 years.
Just full stays in the hot tub.
Grinding hard as every day, every night. You know, it's a 16-hour day planned out. So if you think you're going to get any rest being an artist, you are mistaken.
Yeah.
You're not. You're going to work your ass off. And, you know, again, the higher levels you get, the harder you have to work to be able to keep achieving and achieving more.
Yeah, the level ups get harder. You got to work a lot harder to make an incremental little jump in your skill level. And then also there's a lot of, what do you call it, more appointments, longer appointments, doing all-day sessions.
Well, yeah, I'm going to cut in on there because like that's probably where I said when I said I do it probably better than you guys. I've kind of changed the way I do things. I'm not doing all-day sessions anymore. And
me neither. I do like 5 hours usually.
That's what I'm
4
saying.
or 5 hours.
Yeah,
It's
I do
between
6 to 7.
Like I'll be at the shop for like 6-7 hours, but I'll tattoo for like 4 or 5.
For me, it's between 4 to 6 hours. I am there longer because I have to probably do about anywhere between an hour to an hour and a half of prep work.
Yeah, you got to prep, you got to break down.
I design on the spot too, so like
yeah, so do I.
You know, so that aside, plus 4 to 6 hours of tattooing for the day, and then I'm usually out of there between 5 or 6 o'clock. So and I feel like that is probably one of the most important things about maintaining the balance, because when I was younger, it was like we're gonna go until I physically cannot.
It's also
because
you're starving when you're younger too. You ain't got no money, and you're just like, I kind of need to get this while the getting's good.
And you don't charge hourly or an appropriate day rate for you to actually feed yourself. So you're just
maintain a household.
You have to get the tattoo done because that's what you flat rated. At least when you're younger. That's how I was doing it back in the day. But now, it's hourly, so it's a consistent wage. I work 4 to 6 hours. I'm making enough money for the day, and then that's it. If we don't finish, we don't finish. We come back a month later, and then we go from there. And I feel like all my clients understand that, and they understand that if I was to push myself harder, that I'm going to be experiencing.
You're killing the golden goose.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You're killing the goose.
You're not giving the best work.
Exactly.
You're exhausted for real.
You're going to
I tell them
mental
too.
drain. Mental
real.
Lower quality of work that you can produce.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You're just applying ink for no reason, and you're just not even thinking.
It depends on the client too, though. I mean, sometimes people are traveling. You got to do a longer session on them. So
that's true.
I had a chick come in pretty recently that was a psychiatrist that was like interviewing for a job.
That's different.
Out here in Arizona, she lived in the Midwest, and she was like, I'm trying to get all this done while I'm out here. So I just tattooed her back-to-back days, long sessions on both days, even though normally I do like 4 or 5 hours.
Right.
I was tattooing her like 7, 8, 9 hours
was that
on
dogs?
each day. Yeah, the dog portraits. And then, after that, though, I still had a couple days off where I could rest my wrists and kind of recoup and everything. So sometimes that's how I handle it too.
Right.
As I look ahead at my calendar at different appointments I have, I estimate how much work in terms of mental work, prep work, designing, all that stuff each one's going to take. And I try to look a week ahead at all times just to make sure that I'm leaving gaps in there for rest, for self-care, and being able to recharge in between appointments. Yeah.
I feel like I've ramped it up harder recently than what I had been doing, because after my heart shit kicked off, I quit the job I was working at because it was too stressful, the shop I was at, and I came to go work with you.
Yeah.
That was immediately what happened, because I was like, I'm not going to do this shit anymore. I'm too stressed out over here. And then...
Yeah, that's a shop where they
the
crack
hours
the whip
over
on
there.
Yeah.
Whack.
I'm not going to mention the shop, but it was just really stressful working in that environment. And James offered me a job at that time, so I went over there. I had the freedom and the autonomy to set my own schedule. I ended up working like 4 days a week. However, at that time, I was still doing longer hours. I was probably doing like 8 to 10 hour days.
I remember you were doing some long sessions back then.
So, and sometimes even longer, 12, or I even did like a 15-hour day on this chick that came from
I've seen you
Cali.
do multiple 10, 12-hour sessions in a week.
Right. So I stopped doing that. At this point, I don't do that. At this point, I do the 4 to 6. And then I always look ahead of my schedule. But I'm working 6 days a week. So that's why I say I ramped it back up. 6 days a week, sometimes 7 days a week. But each month I look ahead of my schedule and I block out a week or a couple of days or something where I know I'm going to want to take a trip somewhere. I don't know where I'm going or what I'm going to do yet, but the time is set aside. And I feel like that's important.
I did that too for a while.
It gives me something to look forward to.
During the peak of my wrist problem, when it was hurting the most, I was blocking out the first week of every month, just labeled self-care in my calendar.
It could be whatever you want it to be.
If I needed to like reschedule an appointment or rotate somebody in there, I would. But largely, I would be like, okay, well, this week right here, at least in this week, I'll probably get like 4 days off or something. You know what I mean? So
that's nice to have.
Yeah, I was doing that before, but now that my wrists are kind of getting better, I'm not doing that anymore. Luckily, my shit's improving a little bit.
To me, I need it for my mental health. Like if I'm working 6 days a week or 7 days a week, it gives me like peace knowing that like at some point I'm gonna have like 3-4 days all together. Like, all right, I can go wherever I want, do whatever I want.
With the type of job we have, how much pressure there is, oftentimes like the way that we wind down is just by getting super drunk and just being like, all right, well, I'm just going to go ahead and work hard and then play hard to go and release some steam or whatever because I've been focusing so much. And I think that's like a really common thing for tattooers is to not actually be resting when they're supposed to be resting, to where like we don't really know how to.
I told you when I was younger, that was my way of chilling out. Like I didn't go on trips. I didn't do shit. I would just go to the bar after work. Yeah. And I'd be there till closing. I'd probably be there till like 1, 2 in the morning.
It feels like
Wednesday or Thursday.
After a long session, it feels like you need to, because your brain's all super active from focusing on this tattoo all long, and then you're all zonked out, and you're like, man, I just really need. It's almost like if you work construction, you're gonna have a beer after work. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's the same type of exhaustion, except for us, it's more mental. It's a little bit physical because your back hurts, your wrists hurt, your fingers are numb from the vibration of the tattoo machines, but it's mostly like a mental exhaustion. Your eyes hurt; they're all red from not closing them while you're tattooing. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Yeah, it'd be like that, dude. But yeah, I think it's just important. Probably the big takeaways for me are know your limits physically and mentally, and then schedule self-care time accordingly in order to have a successful work-life balance. And also having good hobbies and routines that you do every day, and having self-discipline, like having enough discipline to exercise, making sure that you're eating properly. If you're not eating properly, you can't have a good work-life balance because you're not going to be healthy. So like all those things tied together. Once you go hard enough though,
and you push yourself to the limit, you have to at some point. If you really love it, you have to push yourself beyond your physical capabilities. You won't make it if you don't.
Yeah. In the beginning, you have to.
Exactly. Once you know those limitations, then you can like dial it back. But
for sure,
again, everybody's different on how much stress you can take. So it's just dependent on the person
and how you cope with it. For sure,
and the lifestyle you want to live, and everything like that.
I think that's necessary. Any young artist watching this, you need to disregard most of that shit and just grind, because you're not gonna survive unless you don't.
That's kind of where I am. I mean, I'm like 2 years in. I'm trying to go harder, if anything.
Yeah, that's where you should be right now, honestly.
Yeah, right now you shouldn't be anywhere near hitting the bottom of your gas tank or looking to refill it.
Year 1 and 2, I was tattooing at 2 a.m. sometimes.
Oh yeah,
for sure. I get there at like 11 or 12, and I'd be tattooing it. My friends would be at the bar.
We're all at least 10 years in, so we've been doing that for a while.
My friends would be at the bar next to our shop. I'm 18 years old. My back's hurting like I'm 45, and I'm just getting it.
All right, so let's recap a little bit. This video is getting a little bit long, so make sure that you are actually resting on days that you've assigned yourself for rest,
right?
Or at least some of them.
Pay attention to your health and your fitness. That's important.
Yeah, make sure that you're eating while you're at work, so you don't come home and just smash down a 2,000 calorie meal or whatever off of DoorDash and then waste a bunch of money that you made and
go to bed.
And then wake up and do the exact same thing, rolling out of bed and showering and going to work without eating.
And schedule some off time.
Off time. Take care of your body. Exercise your body, especially make sure you work out your wrists, your forearms, your shoulders, and your back and your core and all that stuff, so you don't end up developing back problems.
Focus on that good posture.
Just remember that once you reach the escape velocity breaking point where you're like, okay, now I'm a successful tattooer, start making time for other things that you've been neglecting during that time when you were grinding so hard that you were ignoring friends, family, other activities and hobbies and stuff. Right. Start making room for that stuff in your life, because eventually you're going to have to make that room. So if you just consciously decide to do it in the beginning, then you're already ahead of the game, and you're not going to end up hitting a wall to where you're forced to dial it back against your will.
Yeah, so be unbalanced like a grind, and then find your balance. Find your center.
All right, let's do that. Find the center.
Peace.